Hi, everyone. It's Rob, and thanks for listening in today. I greatly appreciate your time. My guest today is Dr. Srikumar Rao. Now, before I share a bit about Dr. Rao, I wanted to share that he will be speaking at the upcoming Conscious Entrepreneur Summit in Denver, Colorado, and that's taking place on May 17th and 18th. I'll be there as well, and if you can make it happen, it'll be well worth the time to attend. There'll be a link in the show notes for more information, as well as information on everything Dr. Rao is up to. Now, Dr. Rao is an elite coach who works with a select group of entrepreneurs, professionals, and senior executives. His clients are already successful and seek his coaching because they need help to have an outsized impact on the world. They are ready to make a dent in the universe. They also recognize that life is a spiritual journey and wish to imbue that understanding into every facet of their lives. Millions of people have listened to Dr. Rao's TED Talk and other recordings and attended his programs and workshops. He has one goal only: to help you experience life in an exceptionally better way. He leads you into a rabbit hole, and you determine how far you wish to go. You may wish to travel only a short distance and settle for a life in which you are much more successful, have better relationships, and enjoy more peace. Or you may wish to go all the way and reach what sages have called by many names, such as enlightenment, nirvana, and awakening. Be aware that if you get there, there will be no you left to celebrate this. Think about that for a moment. Dr. Rao recommends that you simply set out on your journey. In a very short time, you will find that your life has improved to an extent that you would not have believed. Feel free to stop anytime and be prepared to resume your journey when the call comes. Now, on a more mundane level, Dr. Rao holds a PhD from Columbia Business School, and his courses have been among the most popular and highest rated of many of the top business schools. His work has been covered extensively by major media worldwide. He is the author of Are You Ready to Succeed? Unconventional Strategies for Achieving Personal Mastery in Business and Life. And Happiness at Work. Be resilient, motivated, and successful no matter what. He is also the creator and narrator of the audio learning course, The Personal Mastery Program, Discovering Passion and Purpose in Your Life and Work. Now, as I mentioned, Dr. Rao will be speaking at the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit in Denver, Colorado, taking place on May 17th and 18th of 2022. I hope you'll be able to find time to make it there. It's going to be worth it. Okay, you're going to love my chat with Dr. Rao. I'm telling you, get ready to think deeply. Here we go. Dr. Rao, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for taking time to chat.
My pleasure entirely, Rob.
I thought I'd start with a quote, and it goes like this. Quote, when it's over and you look in the mirror, did you do the best you were capable of? If yes, you will probably be okay with the outcome. And that's from John Wooden, the famous basketball coach from UCLA. What comes to mind when you hear that quote?
He got it right there. He nailed it. Because that's one of the things that I stress in my own programs, Rob. We think that the benefit of setting a goal and trying very hard to reach it, whatever, could be a business goal, could be a personal goal, could be a sports goal. And we think that the objective of doing that is reaching the goal. And yes, the objective is reaching the goal, but that's not where the benefit is. The benefit is the learning and growth that happen in you and to you as you try your level best to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
If you actually achieve the goal, that's a bonus. Be immensely grateful. If you don't achieve the goal, the learning and growth have already happened, so you're ahead of the game. It's a no-lose proposition.
what is the universe telling us when that happens, especially when we might feel frustrated, that we work so hard towards something and maybe it didn't work out exactly the way we hoped?
We get frustrated because we think things are under our control. But the reality, Rob, is we never had control, we never will have control, and we do not have control now.
Mm.
Control is a myth, it's an illusion. So if you recognize that up front, you can do everything perfectly and some X factor will thwart you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can do everything wrong and some X factor will make everything turn out wonderful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That is the nature of life. So if you accept that in advance, even as you try your best, you'll find that you do not get frustrated.
What thoughts or ideas do you have around when you feel a certain emotion, maybe frustration, just using that as an example, or something along those lines? How do we work with that emotion?
Recognize that that emotion is something you've conjured up in your head, and it is always, always, always an indication, the fact that you're hung up on things have to go my way.
Mm.
Ego is coming into play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you recognize that, you'll find some of these moments are the best teaching tools you'll ever have.
Mm-hmm. Embrace them. You say, give me a day and I'll change your life forever. What would that day look like?
That day would basically be just conversation, Rob. We go through life and we live our life not the way it is, but according to the model we have of the way it is. None of us live in a real life, we live in a construct. And we built that construct with our mental chatter and our mental models. It's as if every single one of us is living in the matrix, and it fully enslaves us. Only this is not a matrix constructed by an alien civilization out to enslave us. It's something we built ourselves with our mental models and our mental chatter.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you have a situation in your life that is disconcerting, that you don't like, and it persists, you're using one or more mental models that are not serving you well.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of those mental models or make changes in them, and poof, that situation vanishes just like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it is easy. I am saying that is the only way you're going to get rid of that.
You also talk about our mind is like a supercomputer.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Can you expand on that a little?
Sure. We run our lives according to the dictates of our minds, and we don't even recognize that we're doing it. Everywhere we look at, this is not the way the world should be, this is the way the world should be, and we're very busy trying to re-engineer it, make changes in our corner of the world. Sometimes we succeed, more often than not we fail, and quite often we fail spectacularly. And then we react by getting angry, frustrated, anxious, depressed, whatever runs the gamut. And we think the problem is because it didn't work out. We never pause to think about, what's wrong with the world being the way it is? Why do you insist that it has to be the way that you want it to be? Yes, you have preferences. You try your level best to make them happen. Sometimes you succeed, more often you don't. And whatever happens is okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you approach life from that perspective, you'll find that every day is a blast. Would you like your listeners to know how to have a terrific day every day?
I was just going to ask you that.
Well, it's very simple. It's so laughably simple that some people might think, oh, this is too cute, it's a joke.
Okay.
But it isn't a joke. The way to have a terrific day every day is get up in the morning and decide you're going to have a terrific day. The mistake most of us make is in thinking, if I have to have a terrific day, two things must happen. And they are, stuff should happen that I want to have happen, and stuff should not happen that I don't want to have happen. And as we already discussed, you don't have control over either one of those. So why allow that to mess up your beautiful day?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're smart, you'll get up in the morning, you decide you're going to have a beautiful day. You're also going to know that shit is inevitably going to fall from the sky. And in your beautiful day, you're going to spend a couple of hours or more cleaning up the shit that's inevitably going to fall. And you're going to have a terrific time doing that.
Mm.
And if you decide that in advance and say, yes, it's not going to go my way, that's the nature of life, I'm going to try my level best, but whatever happens, happens, and I'm going to enjoy the day, whatever it is, then you'll find, yes, you are in fact capable of having a terrific day every day.
So for those that have for those whose minds are wired not in that way, what are some things that one could do to help change that wiring?
Constantly working on that.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly working on that. Rob, our awareness is like a flashlight. What does a flashlight do? A flashlight illuminates whatever you shine it on, right? Shine it on the floor, shines up the floor, shine it on the ceiling, lights up the ceiling. Our awareness is like a flashlight, and typically, what do we shine it on? We shine it on the 2, 3, or 4 things that are wrong in our lives. More precisely, the 2, 3, or 4 things that we have decided are wrong in our lives. And we never shine it on the 50, 60, or 200 things that are pretty damn good about our life.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, as we're talking, and for those of your audience who are going to be listening either now or later on, do they have to really seriously think about whether they're going to have dinner tomorrow? Do they have a roof over their heads? Do they have a bed to sleep in? And all of that is taken for granted. Why? You never shine the flashlight of your awareness on them, so they slip by unnoticed. I can prove it to you right now. Shine the flashlight of your awareness on the chair in which you're sitting, Rob.
Mm.
And the moment you do that, do you become aware of the pressure of your buttocks on the seat? You feel the fabric or the leather against the back of your thigh? 30 seconds ago, you were not aware of any of that. Now you are, because you've shown the flashlight of your awareness on that. So shine the flashlight of your awareness on the many ways in which you're truly blessed. I would recommend doing this last thing at night before you go to bed. And in the morning when you get up, don't go immediately to the space of, oh my God, there's too much to do and I don't have enough time to do it all. Call that back. Let that feeling of gratitude envelop you. Always shine the flashlight of your awareness of the many ways in which you're truly blessed.
Mm.
And from that space, you then address the things in your life that you would like to change. It is my hope that everyone who listens to this will occupy a default emotional domain of appreciation, gratitude. And the reason for that is very simple. When you're in the default emotional domain of appreciation, gratitude, you're not angry, you're not anxious, you're not nervous, you're not fearful, you're not depressed. The two can't coexist.
Mm-hmm. You're in a unique time in your life. What are you doing with your time these days? And if you're doing some coaching, how does that look different than it used to?
My coaching is different, quote unquote, because the only persons I now coach are persons who are A, already hugely successful, B, want to be even more successful. They really want to make a dent in the universe. But at the same time, they also have an explicit spiritual path, a longing, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And my job is to show them that you don't have to sit quietly and meditate 20 hours in order to grow spiritually. You're becoming a business titan is your spiritual path. And exactly how do you arrange matters so that everything you do is part of your spiritual quest? That's the sweet spot where I do my coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting more and more comfortable with that. And as I get more and more comfortable with that, more and more people who resonate with that somehow find me. And that's how the process goes.
If, as a business titan, to use your words, this is your spiritual calling,
Mhm.
can you expand a little bit on what exactly that means and how one can bring that together as opposed to keeping a spiritual practice over here and my business over here?
Yeah. First of all, keeping your spiritual practice over here and your business over here does not work. You only have one life. You don't have a business life and a personal life. And Rob, tell me if this makes sense to you. I believe that the only thing you ever do in life is you work on yourself. You're a husband, a father. You want to be the best husband you can. You want to be the best father you can to your children. In the process of trying to do that, you're working on yourself. You're running a business. You want it to treble, quadruple, quintuple, sextuple in sales. As you try to make it happen, you're working on yourself. You have irritated customers who are screaming at you. You want to placate them. In the process of doing that, you're working on yourself. The only thing you ever do in life is you work on yourself. And the universe gives you wonderful tools. And if you're an entrepreneur, your business is the Swiss Army knife of tools.
Mm.
As you do the best you can, as you optimize the various forces with which you're dealing, as you try to make those trade-offs, what you're really doing is you're working on yourself. And if you have that as your attitude, then everything that happens is an opportunity for you to work on yourself.
I have a couple of questions to build off of that. The first is that essentially what you believe one of the reasons or the reasons we are here is to constantly learn about ourselves?
The reason we are here, Rob, is to recognize that we do not exist. We are fiction. This notion that you're Rob, you're interviewing Dr. Rao, it's a soap opera. It's something you've constructed. It's something that's playing out. Who you are is not this body-mind intellect complex that you think you are. Who you are is pure awareness.
Mm.
And you cannot be caged by this body. The only thing that's holding you caged in this body is the thought that you are this body. And the purpose of existence is to get out of that, to recognize that you're pure spirit. But we have spent so long and invested so much in identifying with this cage that recognizing that we are not requires effort. And it requires continuous effort. But the universe has given us wonderful tools. If you're an entrepreneur, as I said, your business is the Swiss Army knife of tools. Use it to recognize that you are awareness and you cannot be bound.
Mm. I wonder, over time, is it the things we see in this life, the things that we're exposed to, whether that be through I'll just call it conventional thinking, conventional ways of being brought up, being connected to certain ways of thinking. Why isn't what you're sharing more prevalent in our societies?
I guess you have to go through a certain number of knocks in the school of life before what I say starts making sense. You know, even 20 years ago, if somebody had said that to me, I'd have said, yeah, that seems to be okay intellectually and I can buy it. But, then I go back to, I got to live life, this is real.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's only now when I'm looking at that and saying, no, what I'm saying is not only true, but it is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And we're altogether too enmeshed in something that doesn't exist. And we've created this dream world and we've made ourselves sorry in this dream world, which is actually our creation.
Yeah.
And if you want to get out of it, you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's what all my coaching is about.
Mm-hmm. how do we, as we go through this life and we're utilizing this thought process that you're sharing with us, how do we determine what so many believe is so important, is that you must know your purpose. You must ignite your passion. Is that worthwhile?
I believe that your purpose is to recognize who you are, and that is the only purpose. And who you are, as I mentioned earlier, is pure awareness. You're not the body, mind, intellect complex. When you do that, you'll find all your problems vanish. And when I say all your problems, I mean all your problems.
Because they're not problems anymore.
They're not problems. So
they're just things.
Yes. The problem is our insistence that things have to be a certain way. And they have to be a certain way because we want it to be a certain way. And in all our investigation, we're always looking at why aren't things the way we want it to be. We never examine whether we, quote unquote, exist, whether I exist. And that is the fundamental misperception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You did a talk a while back, and TED chose it as best of the web. These are talks that feature and include a remarkable idea, but they're not actually a TED talk. They're outside of TED. And these are things that the editors recognize are so remarkable that they want to spread it.
And they put it into TED.
And they put it into the TED platform
without ever speaking at a TED conference.
Right. And yeah. I didn't even know they did that. And
they've only done it a couple of times. And one of the defining moments of my life is when I was inducted into that.
Yeah.
Along with me was someone I've admired my entire life, Richard Feynman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This talk you did had over 1 million views.
Yes.
And I wondered a bit, I took a step back and I thought, could you have ever imagined the impact that talk that you were giving, it's a great talk, by the way, was going to have, and why it resonated so deeply with people?
No, I never thought that it would have the kind of impact it had. And that's part of what I mean when I say you never really know how things turn out. And the universe decided to take a hand, and it did.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. But, once again, depends on why million, why not 20 million? Or why million, why not 15? Who knows? So I've given up even asking all of that, and I've come to accept the universe is going to do exactly what is right. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to accept that and work with it.
Was there a point in your career where you weren't quite thinking this way? And maybe
yes, most of my life. That's why it happened so much.
That's great. What was that like? And then how did you notice a difference when you shifted?
It was absolutely terrible. I keep, one of the things I've done is I've always read a lot of spiritual biography, mystical autobiography all my life. And they talk about this richness, inner light, great peace. I say, what the hell are they talking about? Here I am, a tormented soul. And I'm willing to state that I was more tormented than most of the other tormented souls that were around. And even now, I can only guess at what the master's inner space is like. But at least I've had a glimpse of that. And I know, gee, that is the only thing worth having.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Talking about entrepreneurship, you're an entrepreneur in your own right.
I suppose so. An accidental entrepreneur.
Yeah. So you built a successful business. And I always wonder about those that have a certain measure of conventional success, is how I'll term it. If then all of a sudden, if it becomes easier for them to have these ways of thinking because they've accomplished what they felt that they wanted to or needed to accomplish. And what are
That's
your
a
thoughts on that for those that are still in
good
that
question,
phase?
Rob. And I don't necessarily think it is true, because I think that when you have this attitude is when you get success, conventional or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
When you are not desperately trying to get customers is when they are most attracted to you. When you can really sit down and say, hey, this is I am, this is what I do, and I'm really terrific at what I do. And if this is what you need, then we'll talk. And if not, God bless you,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish you well.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find it works wonders.
What about all all these folks that are out there that are talking so much about hustle and, go, you got to go faster and work longer than everybody
Work
else.
longer hours, work faster
Yeah.
hours, manage your time better, be more effective. Obviously, there's a market for that because there's a multi-billion-dollar industry full of people who are telling you how you can run faster, how you can sleep less, how you can multitask, and all the rest of that. But look at your own life. Is this what you really want in your life?
Mm.
Look at the completely out of control mental chatter you have as you try to implement, or is this what you want in your life? You decide.
Mm-hmm.
And I always believe that it's much better to be in the realm of calm being rather than frantic doing.
Mm. Calm being rather than frantic doing.
Doing.
Thank you for that.
Exactly correct.
That's so nice. You're speaking at a conference in May 17th and 18th in Denver called the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit.
Correct.
And I was curious what your thoughts are around what a conscious entrepreneur actually is. And then I'll ask a follow-up, but go ahead.
Okay, I was about to say my definition of a conscious entrepreneur is someone who recognizes that he or she is in business to raise the level of consciousness of everybody in the ambit of the business.
Mm.
That includes, first of all, the entrepreneur himself or herself, all of the people who work in it, the customers, and the other people who are involved, the vendors, the persons who are impacted in society at large.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't just serve a customer. I serve the customer and hope that in that service there is something which will elevate his consciousness a little bit.
Mm.
It's as Ram Dass put it, and this is beautiful. If the Buddha were a hairdresser, getting a haircut would enlighten you.
Mm.
Your job is to be the Buddha. And you be the Buddha because that's your path in life. You're doing that and you want to do it in a way that raises your consciousness. And as you're raising your consciousness, if you become anchored on it, whoever comes in touch with you will also feel that to some extent.
Mm-hmm. For example, you have a customer who works at a large organization in a culture that is very challenging. Mm-hmm. And they show up and they're very much in a poor state of mind on a regular basis. And you might feel they're very difficult to work with. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is you can actually enlighten them in a sense, even just a little.
Even just a little. I have a wonderful parable that I use in my talks. Mm-hmm. It's comes from the Native American tradition. There are many different versions of it. I like the one I'm about to share with you. There was a medicine man, and there was a young Indian boy who was growing up to take his place among the adults of the tribe. And the final rite of passage was a conversation with the medicine man. And the medicine man told him, here is this dog, kind, intelligent, loving, trustworthy. And here is this wolf, malevolent, vicious, cruel, ready to strike at, snap at, and kill anything. And the dog and the wolf are fighting. And the dog and the wolf are both inside you. And the little boy asked, which one's going to win? And the medicine man says, whichever one you feed. Now think of it, inside each one of us, there are altruistic, let's help each other and make the world a better place impulses. And inside each one of us, there are, let me get everything I can for myself, and the devil take the hindmost impulses. And the two are always at war.
Mm.
It is your job to selectively identify and feed the dog in you. It's also your job to selectively identify and feed the dog in everyone you meet. And when the dog in you becomes friends with the dog in the other person, magic happens in both of your lives. All too often, we feed the wolf and we don't even recognize that we're feeding the wolf. You were working, you go to the water cooler or the coffee machine, and your colleague comes up and says, I'm having a bad day at work. And you say, you're having a bad day at work? Let me tell you about my bad day at work. And your bad day at work easily trumps his bad day at work, and you go off feeling smug.
Uh-huh.
And you've just fed the wolf, both in yourself and the other person, never recognized this is what you did.
Mm-hmm.
But if instead you'd gone, yeah, you're having a bad day at work, I'm having a bad day at work, is there anything we can do together to make sure nobody has such a bad day at work? Because we're all here after all.
Mm-hmm.
Now you started feeding the dog. So in every conversation you have with everyone, with your colleagues, with your boss, with your children, with your spouse, with the Uber driver who takes you to the airport, just ask yourself, am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf?
Mm.
Am I doing something that leaves this person feeling better about himself or herself, more elevated, hopeful about the future? Am I doing something to raise this person's level of consciousness?
Mm.
Or am I not?
Right.
Am I feeding the dog or am I feeding the wolf?
Mm.
And make it your business to feed the dog.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Thank you.
And funny thing is, as you feed the dog and others, you're feeding it in yourself too.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Do you have in your career, kind of where we're at now, are you noticing more entrepreneurs and leaders drawn to this idea of a more conscious way of doing business or leading? You know, I'm seeing these conferences now like that you'll be speaking at, and associations and things of that nature. Are you noticing that changing?
I am noticing it, but I must also tell you that my noticing it is biased.
Mm.
And the reason it's biased is obviously people seek me out, but because I now have a long record and there's a lot of material by me out, the only people who seek me out are persons who are already inclined in that direction. Otherwise, they would not seek me out. So I'm certainly on a personal level seeing more and more people who are vibrating in that manner. But whether they are symptomatic of a larger trend, I really am not sure.
Mm.
But I'm cautiously optimistic. And the very fact that Alex reached out to me and he's setting up the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit, and he's got wonderful people like you involved in it and a bunch of others who I also happen to know, is, I think, simply a straw in the wind.
Yeah.
There are more people, and from my perspective, the best thing is these people are kind of finding each other and forming a body. And as we all know, when you become a critical mass, you can make major change in the world. And that's
right.
what I hope will happen.
That's right. Do you see this in other parts of the world?
Yes.
You do.
At least the parts of the world that I frequent, which would be North America, Europe, and India.
Mm-hmm. I feel that business and entrepreneurship in particular, and I love the way that you talk about that being your leadership and your business being your call, your spiritual path in a way, because I do believe that it can make great change in the world. Absolutely,
yes. In fact, I think that this is the most powerful single force that can make change in the world.
How about, some of these larger, I think a lot about some of the larger, like, I'm just going to use tech companies as an example, where sometimes it seems like it you don't really understand, at least I don't really understand what they're really trying to do. And if it is really a good thing, some of the conveniences that we have, some of the positives that come from some of the tech, but then what seems to be some of the challenges that they run into, but maybe don't change as quickly as it might seem like they should. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on where things are going with that?
I think that technology is basically technology, that it can bring about great good. It can also bring about horrendous evil, and we're seeing that very clearly. And it is the responsibility of us as individuals to steer it in the direction where it does good. And to the extent that we see that things are happening which are not beneficial to society, what can we do to curb those?
Mhm.
And that requires a collective will, and it requires a pressuring of the persons in power in those corporations to change.
Mm.
Everything depends upon intent, Rob. What is your intent as you're doing it? And if you see that your intent is honorable, but the results are not, then it is incumbent upon you to see, what can I do to rejigger the mechanisms, the processes, the underlying technology, so that we get it going in the right direction.
Mhm.
This, in my opinion, is not being done as assiduously as it should be.
Mhm. I have kids in their 20s. I do not have grandchildren yet, but you do. How do you feel about the future for them?
I'm always cautiously optimistic, Rob, because yes, you look at it closely and we say, oh my God, things are terrible. But if you look at it from the arc of the history of mankind, there has never been a time where there are fewer people at war, despite what's happening right now
It's
in the
true.
Ukraine, in the Middle East, and various other places.
Mhm.
We've never had a bigger chunk of the population free of basic necessities and human needs.
Mhm.
We've never had an entire population which has the kind of life expectancy they do at present. So, in many ways, we are better off than we ever were as a species.
Mhm.
So let's not ignore the headlines, but let's not obsessively focus only on those.
Right. What are the lessons, if any, but I'm assuming there are in your mind, from the pandemic?
I think the pandemic, at a very visceral level, brought home to us that we don't have control. My wife and I are both tennis fanatics. We've been to the US Open practically every year, been to the French Open a number of times. 3 years ago, went off to the Australian Open. And last year, we were supposed to go to Wimbledon.
Wimbledon.
And at that time, somebody had said, Sri Kumar, you're not going to be able to see Wimbledon. And I said, yeah, possible. But in my head would be something like perhaps someone close to me fell ill, as a result of which I couldn't make the trip. I would never have imagined that the tournament itself would be cancelled or that there would be no planes flying between New
Hmm.
York and London. Okay. So even when we say we don't have control, we kind of assume, yeah, we talk in terms of my marriage is rocky. I don't know if it'll survive. I don't have control. My kid applied to Harvard, but he doesn't have that grades that are that good. So I don't know if he'll make it. I don't have control. But underneath that is a worldview where you don't even question, if I run out of toilet paper, I'll go to the corner grocery store and pick up a roll. If
Mhm.
there's no food in the house, I'll go to a restaurant and order off the menu. And it never occurs to us that even that is questionable. So what the pandemic has done is brought home to us in a very deep and visceral way that we don't have control.
Mhm.
And if you recognize that that is so, and you use that as a tool and say, no, nothing is under control, you take one breath now and there's no guarantee you'll take the next breath. How many people, how many millions of people are there who've taken one breath but not the next one.
Mm.
So don't be morbid about it. That's just the way of life. But if you accept it and work your life around that, it's liberating. And I think the pandemic was such an attention grabbing blow to the head.
Mm. What about the idea of how interconnected that we are on this earth? It seemed to me that this was the first time we could really connect the dots, that we were all dealing with the same exact thing together.
Yeah. I don't believe that there is a difference, Rob. I perceive you as me and me
Mm.
as me or you, whichever one you like.
Yeah.
This distinction is artificial, and the purpose of human existence is to recognize that this distinction is artificial. We're not only connected, we're so intimately connected that we are one. But we think we are different, and that's where we have all the strife, all the hoarding, the greed, and all the nastiness and unpleasantness that's so much a part of the world and society.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to drop off until you recognize that what we're doing to our ancestors, we're doing to ourselves.
Mm. Do you have any daily practices that prepare you each day to just for your day?
There's a wonderful book called The Way of a Pilgrim, which is a spiritual classic. And one of the things the pilgrim was struck by is the notion of to pray without ceasing. We have been so brainwashed. We spent our entire lifetime with out of control mental chatter, and that is ruining our life. And that has gained such momentum. The only way you're going to still it down is to constantly act as a brace, a brake upon that.
Mm.
So that's my entire practice. I forget all the time. Each time I forget, I remind myself and go back. No, this body, mind, intellect drama, it's a soap opera. I am the observer of the soap opera, not an actor in the soap opera. I'm the actor, not the character.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget, and each time I forget, I bring myself back. So that, if you will, is my spiritual practice. I'm ashamed at how much I forget, but then I remember again and go back. And the great masters like Ramana Maharshi, Nisargadatta, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, they were ensconced in that awareness which is beyond all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the only space in which there is no suffering.
Yeah. You have an extremely extensive reading list on your website. We'll have links to it. It's 71 pages, I believe. Maybe there's 2 or 3 or 4 books on each page. And I'm curious, are there 1 or 2 books that you do not include on your reading list that are very impactful for you?
There are many books that I have not included on my reading list that are very impactful for me. And the major reason I haven't is because many of them are culture specific or very highly culture specific. So persons who don't belong to that particular culture might not resonate with it.
Mm.
But the books in the life-changing book section of my syllabus are ones that I would recommend everybody. They're pretty eclectic. They draw from many different wisdom traditions.
Yes, they do.
And I would recommend that anyone who's serious about that, just get the lot of them. It'll cost $300 or $400. Get the lot of them, have them lying around. And every so often, just because they're around, you'll pick up something and it'll come to a random page. And you'll find that what happens or what there is on that random page is exactly what you needed at the time that you're in.
It's funny that you
Let
bring that up.
serendipity work for you.
Say again, please. I'm sorry.
Let serendipity work for you.
Yes. It's funny that you say that, because I wonder, and maybe I'd be curious if you find this to be the case. There are many who get a lot of books. They've got them. They have great intentions. They want to go cover to cover. Interesting that you bring up, just open one to somewhere in the book and just read where you open to.
Mhm.
Is that a practice that you share with the people that you work with?
Absolutely. Yes, I do. They're all super busy individuals. The
Yeah.
notion that they can sit down and spend time reading a book, I know it's not going to happen. But just because it's not going to happen doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So
Yeah.
I keep trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do encourage them, get a book, flip open at random, read where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so many have told me, Professor Rao, you're absolutely right. You know, I was facing a dilemma and exactly what I needed appeared to me
It's right there.
right there.
Amazing. Are there one or two books within the list that you said, if you only could do one, this would be the one I would say you should read?
I'll recommend 2 or 3 of that.
Okay.
I would recommend Michael Singer's The Untethered Soul,
So,
which
yeah.
I think is fantastic.
Mhm.
I would recommend The Teachings of Ramana Maharshi
Mhm.
by author Osborne as
Mhm.
another such book. I would recommend I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj as a third such book.
Great. Okay. Was there anything I should have asked you? Is there anything you would like to share before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I'd like to share that we, as I mentioned earlier in the interview, we don't live in a real world, we live in a construct, which is actually hugely liberating because if it's a construct and you don't like it, you can deconstruct the parts of it that you don't like and build it up again. And this is a process that you will do over and over. It's the rest of your life endeavor.
Mm.
Do it and do it with joy because you're stuck here anyway. You're stuck in the illusion, so you might as well have fun, even as you're working to get out of the illusion.
So good. Thank you so much. Great
My pleasure
wisdom today,
entirely,
Dr.
Rob.
Rao.
I look forward to having that. Please share the interview with me. And I am really looking forward to the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit. As you mentioned, it's on May 17th and 18th in Denver. And I really hope that at least some of the people who listen to this will join us there.
I do too.
And may I say that if anybody listens to this and joins us there, I would strongly encourage them to come up and identify themselves to me.
Please do. Yes. Please say hello to Dr. Rao in person. And we will link all of your many resources about you and your courses, which you have as well, your one-on-one coaching, which are much more in demand these days than ever, and you're more choiceful in who you're working with, but nonetheless, that'll all be listed. And I just can't say how much I am so grateful to you, Dr. Rao, for taking this time with me today. It just absolutely means the world to me.
Thank you for doing this, and I look forward to meeting you in the summit.
I will see you there. I will see you there. Yeah. To all the listeners, I wish you all much love and gratitude. Dr. Rao, many thanks.
Thank you, Rob.